But I got fed up, and the drafting wasn't very so good then. It was getting slow, so I volunteered for special service. And the drafting officer up the excellent gunnery school, he said, "Well, hold on there a minute," he said. And he was on the phone. He come back, he said, "Pack your bags," he said, "and we'll take you over to the station." I got over to the railway station, and there was a few more there. We went off up to King's Cross and then off up to Scotland. We was given a tickety ugly and some cheese sandwiches. One of them was a bit luckier than us, he had corned beef sandwiches. We went off up to Glasgow, and then there was a vehicle waiting for us at Glasgow, took us off to HMS QUEBEC. That was a combined ops depot. We was up there, and 2 days up there, and they sorted us out, and there was quite an handful of us. They took us over to HMS Armadillo, which was the RN Commando Centre.
Had you known at that point that that's what you'd volunteered for?
I didn't know what I was going into until I got to the Quebec, and a fellow told us we were going in the RN Commandos. I thought to myself, RN Commandos, never even heard of it. And of course, there was all talk about this RN Commando business. Anyway, when we got over there, we soon found out. And that was a bit of luck, really, because I was only in there 2 days, and I got called up before the training officer. He said, "Look," he said, "we're short of petty officers." He said, "Will you go through for petty officer?" He said, "You was pre-war serviceman." I said, "Certainly." I went through, and I come through in flying colours. And I've been at it since I was a boy, seamanship and all that. It's come quite easy to me.
What type of things did you have to do to pass for petty officer?
Well, you had to be quite well up in seamanship, semaphore, everything is required for a seaman to get along, steering the ship, the compass, reading the compass, the magnetic compass. Well, I used to be able to go right through the seamanship manual from one end to the other. I used to go through it as a boy. So it came quite easy, really.
Had that experience that you'd had at St Vincent helped you to do the petty officer?
Oh, it definitely did. I was a Greenwich schoolboy as well. I started off there with seamanship, getting on the wheel, steering a ship along, working on the compass. I'd give you the orders. Fight to starboard, fight to starboard, fight to starboard, answer. Then tell you, shout out midships, and you bring her back to midships. Bring the ship back to midship, sir.
So you'd passed as petty officer?
Yes.
What were your duties going to be with the RN Commandos then?
Well, you're more or less like a sergeant in the army leading a platoon. We got divided up then into, there was, what was there, I should say, nearly 40 of us. And then we were divided up into N1, N2 and N3 commandos. And we had our own commanding officer, which was a two-ringer, lieutenant. Then you had a subby, and one of them had a midshipman as well. And then 2 petty officers, 2 leading seamen, and then 8 personnel, other ranks.
And what did you understand of what your role would be?
Well, when it comes to it, like, you know, when we taught on the beach, the first thing in the training we took over to Scotland, over to Prestwick, an army depot over there. We was taught how to drive everything so we could clear it all off the beach. Tanks, gun carriers, the big heavy lorries and all that, and small jeeps and everything else. We all had a Jeep apiece at one time, learning to drive. And then after that, I started to teach us running up the beaches out of assault craft and all that. And they took us on to an armed merchant cruiser which was rigged out with assault craft. And they had Canadians on board, first Canadian div. And they took us off up the Clyde, and they had us in these assault craft and run us into shore. And the assault craft, you run out the assault craft, you'd run a recce along the beach in the water, see if there's any obstacles in the water, and then you put your beach lights up each end of the beach and then bring them round to the craft in.
What would the beach lights be like? What would the beach lights be?
Light?
Yeah, what type of light is the beach light that you use to?
Well, they use the starboard and port lights to mark the end of the beach. And am
I right then, Bert? Am I right, Bert, in thinking then that your duties as naval commandos was to ensure that the landings went ahead and clear the beach of any kind of obstacles that might be on there, just to ensure that the troops move inland quickly?
That's right. They cleared the... We're not quite sure the beaches were safe to bring the assault craft in, and then you'd get the remainder of the assault troops come in, and then after the assault troops you get the bigger stuff, we'd bring them in. They'd drop the ramps and off they'd go, but if it was too sandy we had steel runners to put down onto the sand to bring the heavy stuff over. I would get across the sand onto the more solid part of the beach. And then we'd be working with the army. And then after all the big stuff had come in and got them all going, the stores would start coming in then, and we'd have to help out and help bring the stores in and direct different parts of the beach where to store them and all that.
When you were training, were you given your own assault landing craft? Would it be just purely for with your equipment and stores in?
When it come to the final push, like, you know, when we was on the assault craft carriers, the RCAs used to be hoisted up, and you put your lights in and bit of stuff we had, and then the remainder of the stuff we'd have on our back, a bit of grub and all that in tins, but it's First Army rations then is all in tins, where the 8th Army was all loose rations. Like when we went to Sicily, you had two lots of ration. You had the 8th Army ration and the First Army ration. Ours was all First Army rations, all in tins.
Which did you prefer?
Oh, I prefer the First Army rations because you knew what you had in the tins. When it come to the 8th Army rations, it's all fresh stuff and all that. And especially on the beach, you get sand in with a loose tea. It didn't go down very nice.
Were you expected to live on the beach once you'd made the landings and as the stores and as the heavier vehicles came in?
Once I got a foothold and that opened up the port, our jobs would be finished and they'd take us off ready for another job. Like when we went for Sicily, we didn't know we was going for Sicily. I was on the Glengarry, and that was the first Canadian div with the Prince Edwards. We went on there, and N1 was on there, N2 was on another ship, and N3 was on another one with different units. We sailed for Sicily, and that was 6 weeks that was we was on board. Doing PT and running about on board and all that, keep fit. And then we sailed for Sicily, went into the Mediterranean. When you looked over the side you could see nothing but ships, a marvellous sight it was. Anyway, we come round for Sicily, and the Navy was bombarding, and they dropped us, landed in the, got into the assault craft, and then they dropped us in the water. And I was up forward in the assault craft, LCAs I was. And as we was going in, so I put my head over the top to have a look, and it was a marvellous sight. All these assault craft going in, there was hundreds of them. But there was a shore battery opening up, and you could see the shells popping in between the boats, but I never see one got hit. And then as we got nearer to the beach, there was American soldiers that had been drowned in the water, dropped in the water, and we was going through the bodies. Anyway, we run up on the beach, and then we spread out into the water. The tallest was deepest then. Me being short, I was on the shallow end. I never got so wet as I did. Anyway, we went along the beach doing a recce, and time we got to the end, there were some high tides opening up on us. But we had to keep going, and we finished the recce, and then we was told to get up top and finish off these Italians who was firing at us. And it's the same thing that happened when we was practising off of Prestwick. We didn't know at Prestwick there was this sandbar, and we didn't know we were going to come across exactly the same. We weren't told nothing. But there was a sandbar at Prestwick, and when the assault craft landed up on it, the thing was we had the Yankee assault craft there, and they had a bigger ramp, and they overshot the ramps overshot the sandbar. And there was half a dozen Canadians drowned there, because when they stepped off the ramp, the water was too deep for them. And it's the same thing happened on Sicily, but we weren't expecting that, because we hadn't been told. And there was a sandbar. But we noticed it when we was doing a recce. The subby, he was a tall fellow, the sub-lieutenant, and he said there was a sandbar there. And when we got down to bring the assault craft in, he got there, but they lost a couple of them where the water was deep, but it wasn't all that deep. They fell over, and of course when they fell over, I don't know whether they panicked or what it was, but two of them got thrown, but the remainder was away. I went up through the old war and put the old bazookas in and blew up the war, and that was away then. But we got up on the bit of the incline on the top of it, and you could see these Italians. I was up in a lookout position, and there was only bulrushes round it. Of course we let everything go what we had, but when we come to have a look on those like scissors was, and we was that busy we never had time to dig, and there was a well, and I chucked them down the well. And funny enough, the army personnel come along, and they had some Italians, dead Italians. They said, "Where have you buried them?" "Down the well." And of course I went down the well as well. I don't know whether I was sorted out after or what, but we was too busy then to think about where they was going to go or anything like that. And I bring all the craft in, and they was streaming in, and they was that busy they was knocking one another about the assault craft, and then the big stuff coming in. But we had a bit on the end where it was rocky, and we bought this LST in there. Well, their Lieutenant Russell, we brought it in on this rocky bit. Well, it was flat, and I dropped the ramp down. It is ideal for bringing the tanks in and all that, and they run straight across with no going over the sand and nothing, and had a lovely run away. Of course we emptied it in no time at all. And the next one in, we emptied about 4 that day, with tanks, heavy vehicles and everything else. We never used the beach, just this rocky bit.
When you'd landed and you did your reconnaissance, what were you looking for?
Well, we was looking mainly for, there was to bring the craft in to bring the heavy stuff in, we was looking for a good bit of gross, solid stuff, but it's very sandy where we was, except for this one bit on the end, what we come across when we was doing the recce. We'd done the recce up to it and so it was rocky. But Lieutenant Russell stopped around there having a look at it, and he seemed to know a bit about it from our air reconnaissance. And we was told afterwards that being he was Fleet Air Arm pilot, he'd been doing recce's of the beach from the air. He knew all about it, but he didn't tell us nothing. Kept it to himself. And he sort of just spit out on the end, and that's where I was running in. But
were you looking for beach exits as well on your reconnaissance?
who?
Were you looking for beach exits
Oh,
on your reconnaissance?
well, it was funny enough, where that bit was, there was a pillboxes there and everything else. And when you went down and had a look, afterwards we went down and had a look like that. And but Mr. Russell, Lieutenant Russell, knew all about it. And where the Italian army had been coming in and out, had a real hard bit there for the vehicles were running in and out. And it was quite easy for them to go. And they cleared the beach in no time at all, the heavy vehicles and the tanks and everything else.
You know when you mounted your lights when you'd arrived?
Yeah.
What were the lights on? Were they on some kind of structure so they could be seen?
Oh, they had long legs, the lights. You could dismantle them and assemble and they'd stuck in the legs. And then they had the light up on top. But finish up with, when the assault craft had finished, they went and fetched the other light away. Just had the one light showing where the ramp was, but I didn't need it. Really could see what was going on. And Lieutenant Russell was in touch with them. And we took over the pillbox and everything else, what was there. And I always remember the sun was terrific, it was. And it was catching their legs, because their legs was white. The time we looked down after the end of the day, they was red, they was raw. But Lieutenant Russell was on that beach all the time, he never went off there.
Pocock, Reel 7. Bob, what were you actually wearing then on the landing?
Well, we had our shorts, tropical kit on. Shorts, khaki shorts, it was all khaki. And the stockings come up to the top of your muscles. And army boots.
And were you carrying a pack?
And we carried a pack on the back. But we had emergency rations for the first couple of days on the beach.
What did that consist of, emergency rations?
Mainly like a chocolate was in a tin. Didn't think much of it for a meal. And we had bully beef and them hard biscuits. I don't know whether you've ever seen them, but they're as hard as now as they are. But you'd eat anything after a while. You was that hungry. But after 2 days things started calming down then, and we had the rations, and you bring the stores ashore, we could help ourselves to what we wanted.
What was your job when you were unloading the assault craft?
What
would you be doing to unload the ships? What was your actual function then?
Oh, well, I just got into the assault craft, and we didn't have nothing else, only the set of lights for putting up. And of course, then we had our firearms. A couple of them had a strip Lewis's. I had a pistol, being I was a petty officer, and the remainder had rifles, 303s.
And is that what you used to deal with the Italians? Was it you who dealt with the Italians in the rushes?
Yeah. That's what we'd had the Italians with, yeah. But the strip Lewis, that had a double pan on it. Of course, that ranked it. Once he got going with that.
Was that the only opposition you had on the beach?
That was the only other opposition we had. And where the gun battery was right down the other end of the beach. But they were soon silenced, they was. Because the army went in from the other side and commandos went in from the other side. Marine commandos sorted that out, but it didn't take much opposition at all. But as for aircraft, we never seen no aircraft, German aircraft there.
Your job then, when the assault craft were coming in, would you direct the vehicles off as to where they had to go?
But they only had one way to go on our beach. But right on the other beach, I used all this steel trunking for bringing the stuff ashore, because they had a fairly big sandy beach there, and a long one as well, deep. They had to lay quite a bit down for getting the craft vehicles ashore, especially the tanks and all that. But we only had the one place, but it got them off very quick because it's all solid. No bother at all, because when you get on the sand and you lay that trunking down, after a while it starts twisting and turns and it bends upwards, and you have to replace it then.
Where would you get your supplies of that from?
It all came in with the army engineers. They had everything going, but later stages, the LSTs and all that had a big ramp, and it would shoot out and cover most of the beach. Like when we went over up to Italy, they had it there, I see it there.
So how long were you on the beach in Sicily?
We was there 10 days. We was there when we was pulled back. Then we all three commandos come together and we took us off on the army, took over all the stores and all that. And the LSI picked us all up and took us to Malta. And then we went from Malta to North Africa, BOUGIE, where we met up there with the army. And we had a bit of exercises and all that, and kept in trim. You had the ideal place there with the mountains. That's Lieutenant Russell Rabbit's running up and down them against it. It's never out of breath.
How had you felt the first landing had gone? Had it all gone according to plan, the Sicily landings?
Pardon?
Had it all gone according to plan, the Sicily landings?
They had, and the army was well away then. Never had no bother at all. They never had no real opposition till they got up on the container plane, and that's when they hit it then, like. But after being in North Africa, what was he in North Africa? A couple of weeks, no, less than that, I think. I moved us up to Malta again, then over to Sicily. And then they took us up on Mount ETNA with the old what's the Mount Zeus, is it? The equator.
What, on the volcano?
Hey?
On Mount Etna, on the volcano?
That's right. We was sleeping on there for a couple of nights. And the yarns that was coming out, what the red coming out the top and all that, is it going to blow? Anyway, we all fitted up there and met up with the army personnel we was going to go over with. Now they moved us up to MESSINA. And under cover of darkness, we went into LCA's assault landing craft, ready for the assault on Italy, the toe of Italy, and we was going across to Reggio. And then all of a sudden it started, and there was the army firing from the shore of Sicily. There was the Navy, the old EREBUS was there firing 15-inch. There was rocket ships, a couple of cruisers, all firing onto the toe of Italy. Then we started going in. And the rocket ships was firing over the top of us and everything else. And when we touched down, there was all potholes and everything else. There we had to fill all them in to bring the craft in that had the vehicles on. Anyway, we got the beach lights up, and the remainder of the assault groups coming, but it's ideal beach for bringing vehicles in on it. It's pebbly beach, and no bother at all. And I must have sorted it out beforehand, because there's a road leading straight off the middle of the beach, led off up into the main road. But we brought the vehicles in, then the big stuff started coming in, and then that daybreak was unloaded then, and then all of a sudden 2 Gerry aircraft come along the beach, strafing the beach. We'd lost one fellow there, and an army both gun crew. There's a couple of them caught as well, they got hurt. But the main of our lads was having the breakfast over behind the wall. And I was on the beach at the time. I was standing on the mound 1 minute, but the next minute I was off it. I was laid alongside of it. Then I never had nothing to fire back, only a pistol. But we didn't get no more after that, and everything run smoothly.
When you went ashore, which troops would you be going ashore with? Would you be the first people ashore, or would you be with the first assault troops?
Yeah, we went in with the assault troops there. Majority of our job was vehicles we bought in there. There wasn't so many assault troops went in there. We was on the middle beach, and the assault troops went on the outside beaches, mainly. Our beach mainly had the heavy stuff coming on. And that's the stores. The stores more or less come through on the lorries and went straight off up the road. So there wasn't nothing in the beach area to clog it up.
So what happened next then? How long were you on that beach for?
We was on that beach for 3 days we was on there. And then they moved us up. We went up to, never think of that name. Something. Voltaire or something. The Italian next beach was. We went up there. And the railway was running along near the beach as well. Instead of Gerry coming over bombing us, the old Yanks was coming over bombing us, because we was too far up front. We all had to run up the beach and run into a tunnel there. We didn't know how many more Yankee bombers were going to come over. Anyway, things went quiet and we carried on. I bought troops ashore there and bought a few stores. I wouldn't remember that many stores. And then we was on the move again in LCIs. When we went up, the next one was SAPRI, a little place called SAPRI. Oh, lovely pebbly beach. Of course, we went rolling up there. There was nobody there at all. It was only ourselves. There was a boys' crack going on. I was calling out anybody at home and all that. Anyway, up the beach, and then there was the main road up top. And of course, we started making ourselves comfortable. There weren't no troops coming through or nothing. Anyway, after a while, the LSI went off, and Lieutenant Russell didn't know whether to have the vehicles come in with the stores or what, but he left them out there. And after a while, the old tanks come through then, and up behind them the infantry come. And there was army engineers as well. I said, "You in on that beach?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "I hadn't been mind you." We were walking over the top of it. But they reckon, being it was a pebbly beach, and the mines had sunk down, it was near enough safe enough to walk over. But for the bought vehicles over, the old mines would have started going. Anyway, they wrecked it, and they finished in about 2 hours. And then we bought the old troops and vehicles in then. We were quite busy there because it was an ideal beach for bringing them in, and it was straight up onto the main road. They was relieving Salerno. And we was there 3 days, Yeah, 3 days, and then I caught a bug. I don't know what it was. Anyway, I was finished up in the sick bay, and they poked me on a first aid ship, hospital ship, Red Cross hospital ship. They poked me on there, and I kept going in and out, in kind of a coma. I didn't know what I had, but I had some bug. But they injected me a couple of things until we got back to Malta. I was quite all right, and they put me ashore there. And then I finished up in North Africa again. I went from North Africa down to Saunders. And instead of sitting around there, they put me on the Army's aircraft. And
what are those, Bert? What are the
they was like a flat poo. Oh no, before that I took some LCAs, 6 LCAs. I went and picked them up at Haifa and took them, of course, to the Dodecanese for the landing of Rhodes I was for. But I only had to take them up to this island. It's a Greek island it was. And took these craft up there. I was navigation for 3 of them.